Hey guys, before we get started here, I just wanted to plug myself. For those of you who missed it, I actually started up my Twitch channel about a week or so ago. I've been having a really fun time with that. We're currently going through KH1 level 1, not like a speed run or anything. It's just kind of a casual, walk around, smell the roses. I point out, funny things or things that I think are interesting. I plan on playing some non-Kingdom Hearts stuff as well at some point. I definitely want to do a playthrough of Deltarune at some point, the Spyro trilogy. People wanted me to play Persona, so, Kingdom Hearts and the non-Kingdom Hearts stuff will be going on there. I think I want to kind of test the waters with that over there first. That'll be at twitch.tv/regularpatyt. The YT, of course, stands for Yellow Toothbrush, obviously. Here's a little excerpt of one of my most recent streams. Most people seem to be saying far right. You sure? Positive? Well, we're going far right. I've waited so long to get this stream up and running. And then I announced this at the end of part 1, but I also started up Patreon, mostly because people were like, where's your Patreon, dude? And I was like, yeah, I didn't know I was supposed to have one already. So I made one, and people have been incredibly generous. There are different tiers that you can pledge at. There's a $5, $10, and $20 one. People in the $10 and $20 tier get exclusive content, not like stuff that I would put on this channel. You're not really missing out on like Kingdom Hearts stuff if you're not a patron. Mostly just stuff that I made in the past that I'm repurposing for the Patreon. So don't worry about missing like a KH3 world ranking just because you're not a patron. That's never gonna happen. But if you are so inclined, it would make a world of a difference to me if you wanted to support the channel and get me on the path to doing this, more often. Alright, did I cover everything? New Twitch, new Patreon, all good stuff. Check them out. Let's just get to the actual video already. Jeez. So I think it's fair to say that out of the remix games, Birth by Sleep probably has the least memorable first or hub world, and it can hardly really count as either of those two things. The Land of Departure is like Donald in that it was essentially born to die, but also like Donald, it deserves a little more praise than it gets. The world obviously isn't too big, but I went with the Mountain Pass, which is where Ven is taught the time-honored Kingdom Hearts tradition of hitting your problems. Sora fought little darkness vermin, Roxas fought a troop of slippery sex dolls, and Ventus fought spinny inanimate golden medallion things, so if you ask me, kids these days in fact do not have it that easy. It's also cool that you first get to run around in this world at night. Most Kingdom Hearts worlds tend to take place during the day. Also, check out these 2010 water physics. If there's one thing this series has always been good at, it's water. Rotten thief! Whenever I've talked about BBS level design on this channel before, I tend to throw in some footage of the vault in Dwarf Woodlands. I think this room is demonstrative of being a bridge point between KH2 and future titles. It's still pretty big and open, but immediately has a bit more nuance to it. It's a room that you can't just run in a straight line to get through, which is already a step up from like 90% of the rooms from the last game. It's nothing crazy or even visually interesting, but just some simple layering can go a long way in making a room feel more complex and still leave plenty of space for the action. And you got things in the environment to interact with, which you'll find is a common thread for a lot of my BBS picks. There's this little bubble jet thing to boost you up to the higher level, as well as these potion things that no human being has ever been damaged by unless on purpose because they switch their effects at a glacial pace. It does take Terra about 2 weeks to swing his Keyblade, so maybe they were just trying to account for that. Before Wonderland, but also after Wonderland, there was the Castle of Dreams, though in this case it's less of a Castle of Dreams and more of a House of Nightmares, because the pick here is on Ven's side in Cinderella's house. The Nightmare, of course, is derived from being the same size as this fucking guy. The actual normal-sized world is pretty standard and not super interesting, so it was always going to be one of Ven's areas for this one. My favorite room in his version of the world is the wardrobe room, which is the furthest away you can get from this fucking guy. Aside from the benefits of being distanced from this grammatical car crash, this room has stuff to jump on, and I am famously a fan of jumping on not just things, but also stuff. More points for having various points of entry throughout the room, as well as this death-defying stunt that makes Sora's plank walk look quaint. It also gives Ven the opportunity to present his most threatening aura. Look at this pure physical comedy. Who needs a Keyblade when you've got yarn? Fuck this guy. Insolent fools! It's no contest that the Maleficent Castle is much cooler than the Aurora one, and is it really all that surprising? Is it truly shocking that narcoleptic human rice cake Aurora has a lamer house than this freak in a black sheet? As for the room, you ever see something that's just objectively annoying but you can't help but kind of respect it? In this case, that's the hall in the Enchanted Dominion. Like, I don't really like this room, but that might be because I'm just not used to Kingdom Hearts, and especially anything after 1 deliberately fucking with me when it comes to an environment like this. I'm sure if I literally thought about the portals here for more than like 0.2 seconds, I would be able to navigate it more easily, but my brain has also been turned into melted gummy blocks after many games of just pressing X until scary face go bye-bye. I think Enchanted Dominion is more atmospheric than strictly well-designed, so in a world that's ultimately kind of plain, I appreciate an area that just goes for something different. And if you visit as Aqua, you can also turn this into a KH2 room.
Take this!
For Birth by Sleep's rendition of Radiant Garden, we have the Fountain Court, which, fun fact, was originally called the Hall of Enemas in the beta file. Go look it up, you coward. You won't. So, a few things here. Maybe this room sort of suffers from Super Mario-itis, and that it's like, what even is this, and why was it built this way? Like, you can look at KH1 Agrabah or KH2 Christmas Town, which are vastly different design-wise, but still surmise, yeah, people could reasonably live here and traverse this location. But how does Kyrie's grandmother get through this room? Does Kyrie's grandma literally get her ass blasted with cold water whenever she wants to go from Castletown to the Aqueduct? I mean, maybe she doesn't have to go to the Aqueduct super often, but I don't know, maybe the grocery store's up there. So yeah, world building wise, it's not one of the strongest, but I think it's the most structurally interesting room in the world, as well as one of the prettiest to look at. And look at this real estate up on the edge of the town here. This place makes for a great backyard if you don't mind plummeting to your doom when you step out the back door.
Don't mind me!
The best part of Disney Town is definitely the underworld, the dark undergrowth full of machinery that keeps this Michael Mousetopia up and running. By the way, it kind of makes sense that Pete has an inferiority complex because it seems like he was relegated to living in the town's basement, which is definitely enough fuel to become a domestic terrorist. In fairness, they did give him a decent amount of living space and he just turned it into a giant human-sized pinball machine. I did kind of want to pick that room, but as unique as it is, it's also quite annoying and I've already made an exception for that today. I think the best Disney Town room is the one that precedes it, the Gizmo Galley. Again, as someone who is always going to simp for platforming and environment interaction until the Clarabelle cows come home, the Gizmo Galley is one of the best in BBS. How many times after this do any of the games ask you to use a specific type of magic on the environment in order to progress through the area? I honestly think you can count these occasions on one hand, and I mean a four-fingered hand like most of the denizens of this world. And then you've got these wacky platforming segments with the gears and the giant Michael hands. I simply like to jump on things, and I will not apologize.
The game!
I think by 358 over 2 days, we had pretty much gotten our fill of Olympus, but Kingdom Hearts was not even close to satisfied yet. I think even the devs were like, it would be pretty ballsy of us to just reuse those 3 rooms again, so they tacked on the town near Thebes. Not Thebes, the town near it. You could have gone big and just said Thebes, I would have believed you. It's not like I'm an expert at ancient Greek geography. But yeah, town near Thebes. It's got statues, pottery. It's a great room if you hate pottery. Unleash your inner Link. Kill some jelly things. It's the town near Thebes.
Oh!
You've heard of Graviga, now get ready for not that. There's actually a handful of pretty cool rooms in deep space, although regrettably none of them are in Hawaii or set to Elvis Presley's Suspicious Minds. But the ship hub is pretty cool, and it's got a lot of things I like in room design. Verticality, interactive elements, especially ones that change how you travel through the room, and treasure chests that have, you know, more to them than walking up to it and pressing X. Like, you can turn the gravity on and off, and having it off makes it easier to move around in it, but you need it on to get the chests. So if we can't have peanut butter and banana sandwiches and a lock, shock, and barrel-esque boss fight against Lilo's bullies, at least we get low-gravity shenanigans in this big purple cylinder. What a fucking sentence that was. BBS Neverland is another one with some decent options, but I went with the Aqua exclusive Rainbow Falls Ascent, which is basically the last room minus the gravity hijinks and plus these pixie dust propulsion jets. It's also a mixture of both vertical and horizontal progression, which isn't something you see a ton of in this game or the series. The worst part of this room is that there's no secret chest behind the waterfall. That's like video games 101. But as we leave the proper BBS world, see what I mean by these rooms that have interactable elements that are unique to the world they're in. Things that aren't just for visual flair, but actually play a part in helping you traverse the room. Like KH2's Land of Dragons has those wind gusts, but they're never used to do anything besides reach a puzzle piece, and then they just show up again later in the Cavern of Remembrance. So on the whole, I grade the overall level design in BBS well above KH2, but still a few notches below KH1. But we still got a few more loose ends here to tie up.
Keyblade!
The Keyblade graveyard in both this game and KH3 was always a lot more style than substance. It's more so a backdrop for boss fights and cutscenes than an actual fun-to-explore world. I think by default the most interesting room here is Twister Trench, which would have sent you to the Wizard of Oz world had Disney's partnership with MGM not expired by the time Birth by Sleep came out. Yeah, look it up. Another true fact. Cowardly Lion party member, very hard boss fight against the Flying Monkeys. The area is basically just a flat room with a bunch of big-ass tornadoes roaming around, but there's not a lot of competition here. It's also kind of reminiscent of a previous last world in the series, The End of the World, which also featured big natural disaster-looking things that summon a bunch of mobs to fight when you touch it. We'll just consider this an intentional callback because that's much cooler than it being a coincidence.
Oh, come on.
Why is this something you can visit outside of cutscenes? This simple fact is giving me slightly more work to do. And how is this world able to just drift around and fuse into Twilight Town later? I didn't know Kingdom Hearts worlds could just annex each other at will. I guess the best world in this Mysterious Tower iteration is the aptly named Mysterious Tower, which is at least the room with the most space and potentially might evoke the most Cage 2 nostalgia.
Alright.
The best room in the Mirage Arena is this one.
Faster!
So my main issue with Dream Drop's world design is that it has a lot of potential that flow motion often gets in the way of or invalidates. For the most part, I tried to go with rooms that weren't broken by flow motion, and there are a lot of those, but instead ones that are complemented by it. Starting off is potentially my favorite room in the whole game, the post office in Traverse Town. Aside from being a really cool and imaginative expansion of something from the original game, it leans into flow motion and for the most part cooperates with it instead of being ruined by it. Basically, I think flow motion is done best when it's kept simple, and being able to grind on rails to quickly get around an area is a really solid, simple way to implement it. It's also worked into the environment well instead of just being there for the sake of being used as a video game set piece. Like, you can see these packages dangling from the underside of the rails and you're using the top side to move around. It just makes sense with what the purpose of the room is. On top of that, it's such a creative environment. I think of everything in the game, this most feels like something that a kid might doodle up in a notebook. Like, imagine if the mailbox in the first district led to this cavernous mail room with entirely too much mail for how many people live in this town. Very charming and very fun. As a whole, the Hunchback world doesn't really have a ton of locations that are super indicative of it being the Hunchback world. Like, you got the titular Notre Dame Cathedral, but most other areas are just vague town or bridge settings that I doubt would evoke any recognition that it's referencing any specific Disney property. For a room that both accomplishes this and is at least a little bit physically interesting, I went with the Court of Miracles. It's not as big or interactive as I'd like, but the grindable tapestry things go a long way in livening up the room's appearance. It's also got these little tents that you can jump on, which doesn't really accomplish anything, but they do make a dumb old noise when you do it. Like, again, this room would be so much better if the game-breaky elements of flow motion weren't getting in the way. If you had to grind on the tapestries or jump on the tents in order to reach a treasure chest, that would be ideal. But instead, you can just do this brain-dead move of running into a wall repeatedly to gain height. And I mean, I do it too, but still, somebody needs to stop me.
Shut him down!
I really don't like the grid. It's one of the least interesting visual styles for me. Like, everything just blends together into these dark blocks with neon blue accents. Space Paranoids kind of suffered from the same thing for a while, but it switches up its environments more often and also isn't just a clusterfuck to navigate. It also doesn't have boring cutscenes that not a single person on Earth cares about. I digress. I literally asked my Discord what the best room in this world was, and like, nobody could remember any, nor did anyone want to boot up Dream Drop and look themselves. And like, I love my Discord, but what the fuck, guys? Why did you make me look around the godforsaken grid? So, I don't know, like, the throughput, I guess. With a name as boring as the world, the room at least has, like, layered elements. These fucking swingy thingers. Listen, please, just let me move on. I want to be done with this part of the script desperately.
It's scary in here!
Another example of a room that plays nice with flow motion is the amusement park in Prankster's Paradise. I mean, a big roller coaster that encircles most of the room is exactly what flow motion was made for. It doesn't break the area, it enhances it. And the Ferris wheel chest, one of the best ones in the game. I mean, I know I had good things to say about Monstro, but this room is probably at least 80% less diseased. And to harken back to our discussion about the Fountain Court and things being designed a certain way for a believable reason, I could actually imagine people running around this place like an actual amusement park. I'm sure it used to be filled with debaucherous little children before they were turned into asses and repurposed for this carousel ride. There's also weird little quirks to this area, like evidence that this room once served as a Splatoon map, as well as this fellow up here, which I have dubbed Friendly Randy. He's just keeping an eye out on things. Everything is fine. All things Randy are totally by the books and not problematic. You can tell by the way his face is.
Oh boy.
I think the best parts of Country of the Musketeers are ironically the parts that do not take place in the country, which kind of suffers from bland, generic Hunchback syndrome for me. As someone who suffered through a few semesters of stage crew in high school, the machine room on Riku's side definitely brought back some memories. You can practically smell that musky backstage smell mixing with the dreadful stench of adolescence and desperation. I also like it for the simple fact that it's hard to think of another property where a backstage or behind-the-scenes room would be applicable. Like, I don't know, High School Musical, I guess. You can kind of imagine that a bunch of the outdoors areas in this world could fit into a bunch of Disney films, but there's an added unique quality to the setting for this room. It's got fucking gadgets and gizmos aplenty, and I think I even saw Who's It, perhaps even a What's It on my last playthrough. A lot of Dream Drop rooms are also pretty wide and open, so this more enclosed space is a refreshing change of pace, although it does make it easier for me to get bodied by Dream Eaters.
That's nuts!
Symphony of Sorcery is so cool. And speaking of cool, Snowgleam Wood, apart from having a name that many reviewers and analysts have determined to be, quote, pretty as fuck, is a really fun and interactive area. Also, bear in mind, the only true snowy environment we've had up to this point in the series were like 2 rooms of Christmas Town, and I mean, that place was fine and all, like it had some Christmas spirit to it, but this section really captures a truly cold and secular winter solstice. The night sky, the snow flurries in the air, the goddamn Nutcracker suite. Like, maybe I shouldn't let the music that plays in an area influence my rating, but Symphony of Sorcery is all about the music, and the track they picked here really drives home the atmosphere. And as I mentioned, this room has a bunch of fun little elements to it, like these floating snowflake platforms, which yes, you can cheese past, but like, hey man, maybe don't. You ever think about that? You can also pummel Dream Eaters with a snowball, grind around on these icy rails, and give yourself hypothermia. It's the ideal Friday night.
Accept the darkness.
Fitting that my pick for the last world in the game is a room that finally puts its foot down and says no to flow motion. It's the Delusive Beginning. The early portions of it are kind of your typical world that never was fair, but it gets more interesting as you move through it. The big set piece here is like the spiral staircase thing, which is fine, and there definitely are flow motion-y parts like here with the grindy tube thing, but the best part by far is this recoated looking ass wall. It's made up of these flow motion repelling surfaces that I actually proposed back in the Evolution of Motion video, and to be honest, I forgot this part of the room was a thing when I wrote that. It's almost funny that this game lets you abuse this mechanic for nearly its entire runtime, and then it takes it away from you if you want to try to get this chest. Reject flow motion. Return to dodge roll.
That's the way.
Wow, I literally never get to talk about 0.2 on this channel. I mean, I guess I'm really the only thing stopping me from doing that, but I don't know, it just never comes up that often. The Dark World as a whole is so cool, and I don't think it's really controversial to say that it's most interesting in 0.2. For a place that's always regarded as so dangerous and mysterious, outside of 0.2 it's always depicted as like a bunch of glowy rocks with a beach. But this game fully realized what I think the Realm of Darkness should be, pretty much an extension of the end of the world. Specifically that volcanic crater part with all the decayed structures from the Princess World seen in Birth by Sleep. 0.2 as a whole is incredibly solid with interesting room designs, but the first area really struck me when I first played the game. The idea of a little village area just chilling out completely abandoned in the Realm of Darkness is equal parts chilling and sort of like beautiful. Castletown is also kind of unique in that it's this big area with consistent theming, but it like branches out into these semi-linear paths in order to hit the gear things to progress the story. It's also a great area because it implies that this fucking guy is lying dead in a ditch somewhere. I might have some weird vendetta against mice.
Here we go!
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? I kind of couldn't believe my eyes when I first saw that Olympus was going to be in KH3, but they definitely made the right choice by having the world center around and build up to the actual Mount Olympus. So obviously my pick for this iteration of Olympus is going to come from the mountain itself. I went with the corridors, which is like the main middle chunk of Olympus proper. Just on a visual level, I think this area really nails what my brain thinks of when I hear Hercules. Like, all of the Coliseum and the underworld stuff was fine, but the Greek architecture mixed with all these fluffy clouds and everything having this golden glaze to it is really evocative of the movie for me. It's also got this mixture of open and enclosed spaces, which helps the area feel a bit more fleshed out. And it's got this big grindy rail thing to the top of the mountain, which is scientifically very cool. While we're here, I'll just cut to the Ray Chase and say that KH3's world design as a whole is my second favorite in the series. It doesn't top KH1's tighter and more contained level design for me, but the mixture of a typically wide open world that is often cooperative with Sora's movement capabilities is a pretty close second place. It doesn't have as many raw platforming opportunities, but the game is never broken by flow motion like Dream Drop, and it has more layered and varied room structure than KH2. I think the scaling and proportions and how Sora is able to interact with his environment are all dealt with much better here than anything since 1. So quick ranking in terms of just pure level design, I go 1, 3, BBS, Dream Drop, 2. But let's move on.
Totally owned you, lamers.
Oh boy, the great Twilight Town debacle of 2019, as they call it in the hallowed halls of epic gamer debates. It's akin to getting a really delicious slice of pizza, but the slice is the width of your pinky finger. Like, I don't think anyone is arguing that the Tramcommon isn't delicious, we're just wondering why you would serve us this very, very small piece of pizza and then not offer us any more. Because goddamn, when I first got here, I had to set my controller down and just bask in the glory of this room. To see the series go from 3 Agrabah NPCs that you can see for like 2 minutes, to a crowd of adoring fans, to an actual breathing town environment, it was just so satisfying to see. Like, I know they're mostly just stationary character models, and it's not like they have Skyrim-esque daily routines, but it adds so much to the world in making it a believable town environment. Like, I had Twilight Town as my favorite world in KH2, and as a whole, I'd still rate that as a better world experience, but this one portion of KH3 Twilight Town blows the rest of KH2's out of the water. This iteration oozes charm and detail, but in a way, it'd be harder to notice and appreciate it if we didn't have the KH2 version to compare it to. I love how they remix certain parts of it and repurpose some areas for things like the theater or the bistro. I guess a lot of remodeling happened while Sora was away. If the rest of the KH2 world got to be fleshed out in this new style and the world had more reasons to pull you back to it, this would have been a contender to beat Traverse Town for my favorite hub world in the series.
Whatever you're talking about, I don't care.
I know Galaxy Toys is where the bulk of this world takes place, but I knew as soon as I got to this part of the project that it was gonna be Andy's house. And I'll be honest, I didn't really look at or even consider anything else. This is one of those situations where iconic is gonna win out over basically every other option. Like, you can take a Moonlight Hill from Nightmare Before Christmas or the Treehouse from Tarzan, and it's like, yeah, those are iconic locations, but you only see them in one movie. But we've had 3 movies with this environment, and it might not be a one-for-one recreation of it, but it definitely carries the same energy as it does in the films. I would argue that this room does a better job at just placing you in the movie than anything else in the series up to this point. And for the record, I prefer when the game does that in a physical and visual sense, not necessarily a story one, because both Cage 2 and 3 definitely lean into the latter at some points. Andy's actual room is obviously the main attraction here, but it was also cool and sort of surreal to just see like a normal-ass 90s, early 2000s neighborhood as part of a Kingdom Hearts world. Like, look, cars that aren't trying to kill us, they are simply parked and have state-issued license plates. It's also home to one of the best lucky emblems in the game, Do Not At Me. Look at these empty can physics. This is what this game was delayed for. Yeah! This is basically just a retread of everything I was saying about the Tram Common, but the Kingdom of COVID's thoroughfare is another great living and breathing environment. It was so cool on the first playthrough to see that they were willing to give this kind of attention to the Disney worlds as well as the Kingdom Hearts original ones. Wow, look at these guys outdoor dining, not a mask in sight. Points off for inconsiderate locals. Points off of my own video for dating it with these references. Hopefully. Hopefully one day you'll come back to this video and these references will be dated. And I'll be honest, I like this world a lot, but there aren't really a ton of standout locations, maybe aside from Rapunzel's Tower, which does serve as a really fun boss arena in my opinion. But I was still riding on the high of actual populated areas when I got here, so it again just knocked my giant socks and shoes off. Also, I know that he could do this in Twilight Town too, but Sora just randomly grabbing a prop and street performing for pocket change is really funny and totally in character. Why? Why do it? What was the point?
Mike Wazowski!
And to harken back to my pick for the toy box, the best room in Monstropolis was always going to be the door vault. I knew Monsters Inc. was going to have a world in Cage 3, and I just remember thinking they better do the door vault and it should ideally be cool. And guess what? They did it! Like, I can hardly think of any other locations when I think of Monsters Inc. I think they go to Mike or Sully's house when they're harboring a fugitive. They go to the Himalayas with John Ratzenberger Yeti. But like, for an interesting environment in an action RPG, the door vault is a shoo-in. And like, look, it's not particularly deep and it's mostly just predetermined sequences of you grinding on the rails, but it just looks really cool and it was a requirement for the world. There are more structurally interesting and well-designed areas in this level, but my 5-year-old brain can't hear you. I wish there was a bit more to do at a more frequent pace while you traveled along the rails, but I'll take what I can get here. If I say anything negative, I might get yeeted through one of these doors.
Annoying.
Arendelle is kind of like the grid of Cage 3 for me. None of this means anything to me because it all looks pretty much exactly the same. North is snow, south is snow, left, right, and counterclockwise is more fucking snow. In fairness, I don't know exactly what you pull from Frozen to use in this world. I mean, they've got the ice castle in the actual town, but I guess they weren't interesting enough to actually use them outside of background imagery. I decided to just forego searching for a room in the outdoors portion of Arendelle and settled on something in the labyrinth. At the very least, the labyrinth is aware that it's confusing and visually disorienting, where the actual snowy outside part is genuinely more labyrinthian. Specifically, my favorite portion of the labyrinth is the middle tier, which is accessed from the lower tier through this really cool air step sequence. Also, breaking a big chunk of ice is very satisfying both IRL and IKH. There's also something to be said about a location that really is never seen in the source material but still totally fits in with the spirit of the movie. Like, it's not Elsa's big introvert ice castle, but it might as well be its basement. It's just something that Larxene whipped up with her ice powers that she's famous for using all the time.
We're gonna sink!
I'm tempted to just go for the town of Port Royal for the Caribbean, especially considering the glow-up this world got from Cage 2 to 3, but we've kind of played out the whole populated town location pick by this point. So I decided to go with one of the distinctly unpopulated islands that you can explore in this world, and I settled on the Sandbar Isle in the southern part of the map. I just like the idea of this circle of land surrounding this underwater portion, which, by the way, I know I was joking at the start of the video about the underwater sections in KH games, but they really have come such a long way. Not only does it look really pretty, but it also controls, like, more than tolerably. That's neither here nor there when it comes to this area specifically, but I just wanted to point that out. If there wasn't a constant existential threat of tsunami or giant squid monster, I would totally build a house right on this rocky part in the center, after evicting the crab tenants, of course. I also like this little offshoot island on the side here that you need to jump across these pillars to get access to, and the highlight of that island is this big hole in the ground that leads to this subterranean water cave with potentially the best treasure trove area in the series. Given that this island is entirely optional and that this whole world is themed around pirates, it genuinely feels like stumbling on a big, well, underwater loot box. It makes Ariel's Grotto look like a failing thrift store. And another really solid hidden Michael. I do prefer my Michael's hidden, for the record. So at face value, it looks like my choices in San Francisco are either Hero's Garage or San Francisco, but I figured picking one of the 3 districts was a good way to widen the selection pool a bit. And guys, I'll be honest, I was flying around the city trying to decide which portion was the coolest, and then I looked up and realized, oh yeah, it's the one with the giant windsock air turbine fish things in it. It's technically the central district, I guess, which is definitely smaller than the north and south districts, but they don't have giant windsock air turbine fish things in them. If it makes any difference, I prefer the room and the entire world at night. It just looks so much cooler when everything is all lit up. And I mean, it does also have this big blue building that you can run up to live out your memory skyscraper fantasies in the KH3 engine. Just mute the TV, put on another sign, and it's like you're right back in the KH1 secret ending. Aside from all my superficial preferences for this area, I obviously appreciate the unparalleled verticality at play here with all these buildings, although given how open and non-mandatory so much of this world is, it doesn't have too many opportunities to shine through as far as level design goes. It's just a mini GTA map, but it does its job well enough, and it also has these giant windsock air turbine fish things.
Are you back for more?
Keyblade Graveyard looks boring, but Big Tower is big. Big Heart is big. Nort Court happen here? That's really all I've got. Like I said, this is for bosses and story, and this world does a great job at that stuff, but otherwise, Big Tower is big. I like to run up it. I like to jump off it. Look at all these dead people weapons. Sora sees dead people weapons. The final world is so fucking cool. You know, the first thing I said when I booted up KH1 in 2002 was what this series really needs is a take on purgatory, a metaphysical and spiritual journey to somewhere between the tangible world and the great beyond. And my mom was like, whoa, shut up, you nerdy baby. Most of my appreciation for this world comes from KH3 just having the absolute gall to be like, yeah, no, death really is a thing. We know we don't acknowledge it that often and we bring people back to life all the time, but it's real. We're gonna say the D word right now.
The edges of sleep and death touch.
Wait, death?
Yes.
There's really only 2 options here, and while I do love the big empty sky void with a bunch of dead stars who used to just be everyday real-world normies until they died a regular boring death, I love this big twisty marble Rubik's Cube thing even more. I love when Kingdom Hearts gets fucking weird. I'd play a whole game of just big environments you can turn so you can platform around and grab Phantom Soras. It's like the Bazaar Room, but minimalist. For the record, I don't think anything here has an actual name, so we're just gonna call it Regular Pat's very cool metaphysical apartment / bed and breakfast ski lodge laser tag arena. If it didn't have a name, that means I can claim it for my own. That's just how it works.
Is this the end?
What a great place to end off on. I was having a blast with KH3 the entire time when I first played it, but Scala was the first thing to really take me back to that feeling I got as a literal 6-year-old when I first saw something like Hollow Bastion or End of the World. Like, the final world definitely felt different, but that was mainly on a story level, and a big empty void is something I feel like any game could do. But Scala just immediately screamed Kingdom Hearts at me. This place gets teased in the opening for a few seconds, but I had A, completely forgotten about it, and B, had no knowledge of it from any pre-release materials. I understand that fans had taken to calling it Cable Town, a real BHK for the modern age. Now, I was already satisfied with this world just being what it was in the base game. The visuals and mystery behind it was more than enough for me. But like pretty much everything else it touches, Remind made this place so much better with the addition of Breezy Quarter, which is where the whole Kyrie Heart fragment sequence takes place. As much as I had enjoyed KH3 and its levels, it never really had any of that KH1 or BBS type stuff where you often interact with an environment to solve puzzles or progress. Like, yeah, you grind on rails in Monstropolis or swing across a gap with Rapunzel's hair, but that's not really what I mean. This area just felt like a little injection of that KH1 energy, very reminiscent of like a library puzzle. Nothing crazy or complex, just something to shake things up a bit, whether it was this contraption thing, the fountain, or figuring out how to get into this big tower area. On top of all that, this place is just absolutely beautiful. It's not something that looks like a final boss arena or the last major place you'd explore, but I think that contrast really adds a sort of unnerving atmosphere to the whole experience. And with that, my friends, we are done with this oddly specific exercise.
Hey, how was the video? Hopefully it was worth the wait. If it wasn't, I can take the view back. There, it's like you never even watched it. Not a whole lot to report or plug today, you know, just typical stuff. You want to keep up with me, follow me on Twitter, the Subpar Patsby, Discord server, Twitch, you know, regular Pat YT on Twitch. The VODs for that, by the way, will be on a second channel, regular Pat's cleverly named second channel. That is the name of it. And of course, you know, if you'd like to support the channel, I would be super appreciative of it. That would be Ko-fi for if you want to do a one-time donation, or Patreon if you'd like to pledge monthly. Again, you know, it would mean a whole lot to me if you could spare a boy a penny or two, or more. We'll go through a little more fan art like always. First up, we've got the Bi Pride Platinum Presto by Violet. Honestly, anyone who wants to just, you know, put your nationality, gender identity, sexuality on the Platinum Presto, that's fine. If anyone has a problem with it, they can kiss my ass if they'd like. We've also got this this little rendition of me by John Arama. Very, very cute. For my, you know, non-self-centered, narcissistic art plug for this video, Luke, Regular Roxas, did this rendition of the KH3 Remind cover. Very good job there. And then, God, what else? I think there's nothing too much to report. Oh, I mean, I did become a father recently. I didn't want to tell anybody until, you know, I knew that everything was gonna be okay with the delivery. But I am a dad now. He came in like pretty late, but I am really, he has my eyes and my legs. Look at this. Do you see this? Do you see what I'm seeing right now? This is my son. This was made by Annalisa, the lonely nerdette on Twitter. She's it was incredibly kind to send this to me. I'm in love with this baby boy here. I will do everything in my power to make sure he succeeds in life and he is safe. And if anybody does anything to harm him, I will rend you asunder. Anyway, thanks for watching. A lot of fun stuff coming up. Feel like I say that every time, but there is. I'm really excited. There's just cool things happening in the universe, and it's all because of you. So, thanks. Like, comment, subscribe.